Hey listeners, welcome back for another episode of Steel Connections. Today, we are zooming out, talking about strategy and its importance in business, even in our industry, in fabrication and construction. Sean, before we bring our guest out today, why don't we tell them a little bit about what we did last week in this important milestone centered around strategy that we even went through?
Well, so this particular system, I think, is a means for us as entrepreneurs and business leadership to get organized and plan and execute what our projections are for the year, for the quarter. And I know for me personally, I really like the cadence of the meetings that we set up and that we follow to a T. I think that's really helped me in my professional life and even starting to help me in my personal life as well.
Yeah, what Sean is referencing is a specific framework which we use, which our guests will kind of go over a little bit for us. Last week, we went through, as a leadership team, we went through our annual planning, just centering around strategy over the next decade and where we want to go, and just really hashing out exactly what the next year will look like, including some tactical action plans for us to take back to our team and drive down. I think it went really, really well. And I was excited and pretty energized after we left. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's something that we decided we want to take back to our listeners and kind of dive into the importance of just having everybody rowing in the same direction and having a really good vision in mind about how we're moving forward. Even in the construction space where it may not be as prevalent, maybe people are thinking that it's not as necessary because we're not some bigwig tech company, white collar industry. So
The relevance here for anyone, big or small, just having that structure, that framework, like you said, is invaluable. And I didn't want to give too much away with announcing our guest because he's such a better storyteller and explainer of this thing than I would ever be. So, um, yeah, if we could bring out Elliot, that would be fantastic.
So our guest today is Eliot Wajskol, who's an experienced professional with over 20 years of global executive leadership experience. He's a certified EOS implementer who's passionate about assisting leaders in driving business growth, maintaining a balanced life. Eliot's engaging content is designed for busy leaders, focusing on building great organizations, addressing issues head on, and instilling discipline, accountability, and aligning the team with a clear company vision. I would say for our experience with him, we met Eliot when he partnered with us, helping Instafab really implement this entrepreneurial operating system, which has both enriched and expedited our transformation as a company. And I think aside from like business relations, Eliot's just like this great guy to know. So I'm excited to bring him on out. Come on out, Eliot.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Sean. Oh my gosh, I need that intro every day. I love it. I appreciate it. Everyone needs a hype person. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you have so much there. I didn't want to miss any of the content too. I was stressing about it this morning, making sure I covered it well.
Thank you.
Well, Eliot, do you want to get started by just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do with the EOS system?
You bet. You bet. Well, I think maybe to put it in a nutshell, I work as a leadership team coach and facilitator. And my passion is just helping leadership teams to run their businesses more effectively, to drive growth, to get what it is that they seek from their business. And ideally, as we run our businesses more effectively as individual leaders, we also have the opportunity to live a better life. And that's my passion. That's my focus. When I'm working with leadership teams, the system or approach that I use is a proven framework, a proven system with a set of practical tools and disciplines that we call the entrepreneurial operating system. And so working together, that's the system that we've leveraged working together.
Very nice. So Eliot, there's this like common belief that small businesses or solopreneurs, I pronounced that right, really don't need to have this formal business plan. Can you discuss kind of the role and the impact of strategic planning, even for a small scale business?
Absolutely. I think the organizations that I work with tend to be organizations that have approximately, let's say, 10 to 250 employees, sometimes smaller, sometimes larger. I'm effectively a solopreneur, and I use the same system for myself with my own business. And I think the core concept to me, the plea that I have for everyone is, um, in order to get to where it is that you want to go, just have a framework, have a way of looking at the world, have a set of tools and disciplines that you can apply each and every day. Whether you're a solopreneur that's growing, whether you're a small team, less than 10 people, whether you're a larger organization. And with business, I think it's just really hard to get to where it is that you want to go if you don't create a group of people, a team, and even yourself, where you're crystal clear on your vision. Where is it that you want to go, and how are you going to get there? Where you've got a set of tools and disciplines that allow yourself to be just a click more accountable, a click more disciplined, you and your team ultimately becoming masters of execution, delivering on every aspect of that vision. And assuming you have more than one person, that you are doing so in a way that creates a healthy, cohesive team. Because sometimes leaders don't get along so well. And once you have that set of tools and disciplines as a team, even if you're a solopreneur for yourself, but as a team, from there, I think as a leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. And then it's about applying those same tools and disciplines across the entire organization. So ultimately, you create a team that's got that shared vision. Everyone's in a place to be more accountable, more disciplined. As an organization, you're consistently gaining traction on what it is that you're setting out to do. And you're just moving forward as a more healthy, cohesive, hopefully a little bit more fun team as well, delivering.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know over the last, I'd say, what, 6 months, you think, Brandy, our team went from, the firefighting routine, day in, day out, um, tackling problems with a knee-jerk reaction. And boy, I'll tell you, the last 3 months, I think, as we've started to kind of, as Brandy put it, row in the same direction, our capacity and our output is just growing exponentially by day now, and it's incredible to watch from within and from, looking in from the outside, seeing the team come together and start to believe in the system and kind of follow suit and drive the same program internally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I come from, a different industry where strategic planning is custom. You do this every year, the annual planning portion of it, at least. And what we've been going through with you, Eliot, is very different than the traditional model. Sean, I think you experienced that when you came on, at least at the beginning of this year with Instafab. I was trying to replicate the same traditional framework of annual planning, and it's kind of boring and it's dusting, it's more complicated. But the way that you come into our lives, I mean, it's helped simplify things, and the tools you mentioned helps with the discipline, because I think the disciplined approach is the hardest aspect about implementing a framework like this into your company.
Yeah, I think Sean and Brandy, it's been it's just been a joy working together, because the speed with which you've gone on implementing a set of tools and disciplines has been incredible. And I think that one of the things that we focused on is, rather than focusing on strategy first, we focused on traction and execution first, because I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what idea anyone has. Execution will lead strategy every single day. And that's, I think, so much of the key is, whatever the big ideas are, we'll get there. But can we first hone the ability of the team to just execute? And so we focused ultimately on just getting stronger in 6 key dimensions. And I think that's really the element or the framework, the core of the framework behind the entrepreneurial operating system is, how do we just get stronger as an organization in 6 dimensions? Vision component, number 1, just getting everyone on the same page about where we're going, how we're going to get there. The people component, how do we truly get to the heart of who exactly is the right person for our organization? And what exactly are the seats of the core functions that we need in an organization to do this work that we do? And how do we get just to the heart of identifying what does it mean to have the right person in the right seat? The third component being the data component, pulling things back so we can get to the heart of what exactly are the facts, the figures, information that we need in order to predict what's going to happen rather than what already happened. And ultimately, as a leadership team, how do we get a scorecard that focuses on the leading indicators rather than the lagging indicators? Revenue and profit is a result. but how do we focus on the upstream activities and dial down on those and not just have the measurables, but act on them every single day and every single week if they're on track or off track. The fourth component, so if the first three are really about the vision, having right people in the right seats with people, the right data, and acting on the right data with the data component. The fourth component is the issues component. How do we just get incredible at identifying issues before they become big and just knocking them out and knocking them down for the good of the organization systematically? The fifth component, the process component. Ultimately, how do we just get to a place where we can make this organization just easier to run so that we can become more profitable, more scalable, a little bit more fun, so we can routinize the things that we should be doing right the first time every time, so we can focus our time and energy where we should be more creative. And the last component of traction, how do we meet rigorously every year, every quarter, and every week in a way that's systematic and disciplined and pulls it all together? So we're constantly tweaking and adjusting on the key measurables that matter, that scorecard. So we're making sure we're dialing down on those activities and behaviors, making sure we're staying focused on the big defining and staying focused on the big things we want to deliver every quarter, so we get to a place of delivering 80% or better on everything we set out to do. And how do we just get really good every single week at radically prioritizing the issues we got to tackle, because we can't do everything at the same time, and then knocking them down bit by bit. So ultimately, we're executing on what it is that we set out to do. And so that's just a set of tools and disciplines, I think, that you all have put, and a cadence of meetings to great effect.
And there's so much involved in that model too that is just, I love to pick apart. There's not one portion that's better than the other, in my opinion. But the part that I don't often see integrated in kind of strategy and business has been the people component. And for me, that's just been a highlight. And it's so important. I think that even our experience over the last year with this framework, being sort of this company that's intending to be really mission driven and built and centered around our core values, it has been transformational. Even the tools and the focus that the EOS model has really put on core values in our strategy. What do you think are some of the tangible benefits for a company for embracing that portion of the model?
I think that, to me, the people component is absolutely one of the most powerful components. I think what happens in too many organizations is that, and most of the organizations I work with tend to have been started by a founder, by a business owner, or they're owned by a business owner. And what I think is so amazing about entrepreneurs and business owners is they have this crazy thing. They're really good at what it is that they do, and they have this amazing ability to somehow to pull people together on this crazy journey that they're on, and somehow cobble together this amazing group of people that can execute. But what ends up happening all too often, there's an inflection point at some point in an organization, whether we're 2 people, whether we're 250 people, we look around ourselves and all of a sudden we get to this place where we're frustrated. Somehow this person will do that, but they won't do something else. And the other person will do a little bit of this, but they won't do that. And all of a sudden I'm looking at myself, my time, my energy, and I'm like, why in the world am I doing what a whole bunch of other people should have been doing? And why aren't they executing really well? What all of that ends up being, and then ultimately, of course, we're not executing on the things that we set out to do well and effectively. And so often the root cause of why that happens is we built an organization that's based on people rather than based on structure and core values and disciplines. And so what we choose to do is we say, you know what, the only way to get out of this is to implement a set of tools and disciplines in a framework. One is to say, we've got to start building our organization based on structure rather than people. It doesn't mean we don't care about people. In fact, it enables us to care about our people even more. But what that really is to say, how do we get to the heart of what are the core functions that have to happen for our unique organization? Instafab is different from any other organization, but we get to the heart of saying, I think that the core functions are, well, we've got to do marketing and sales really, really well, for example. We've got to execute on our operations really, really well. We've got to do finance, HR, people, et cetera, really, really well. And so ultimately we define what are the core functions that our organization has to do super well, regardless of which person is there. And oh, by the way, as a leader, I don't get to have a life either until I have someone in place in each of those, what we call seats, in each of those functions, each of those seats. I've got to get to a place where I define what are the core functions. And then inside of each function, what are the roles that need to get done really, really well? I'll pick marketing and sales. We've got to market really well. We've got to sell really well. We've got to hit our create a pipeline. We've got to hit our numbers. We've got to have core process in place, whatever that might be. That's got to get done really well. And then inside of each seat, I've got to have someone, as we use the term, who's right person, right seat. And what right person means is we've gotten to the heart of what our core values are, not the aspirational things, but what truly are the behaviors that we've got to have from every single person, because behavior repeatedly demonstrated ultimately becomes culture. And so inside of each seat, I've got to get really clear across the organization what are the behaviors that we've got to demonstrate. Everyone has to demonstrate relentlessly. And so inside of each seat, do I have someone who demonstrates those behaviors? And if not, they're not right person for our organization as much as I might love them. They're just not right for our place. And I've got to have someone who gets it, wants it, and has the capacity to do that job really, really well. Gets it, meaning they've got this intuitive ability to just know what needs to happen. Wants it, they actually have to want to be great at that role. And capacity, they've got to have the acquired skills, knowledge, and experience to do that job well. Ultimately, by intention, we take a look, we build out what we call an accountability chart. It's got the seats defined, the core functions that have to get done in the organization, the roles for each seat, and we define our core values. What are the behaviors we've got to see across everyone in the organization? And we get really clear then for each person, do they truly get it, want, have the capacity? Do they demonstrate those core behaviors? At the beginning, we're not there, but when we can get to a place where we can look around ourselves and say, I've got 100% right person, right seat, or at least 80% plus, magic starts to happen, because now we're surrounded by a team that executes, and we are working together, and we're clear about who's accountable for what, but we also have a team that works together really, really well.
Right. And Eliot, I think when you're talking about these concepts and making sure someone who matches your core values, get it, wants it, has the capacity to do the job, it seems obvious, right? I think from my experience with implementing this, it's when you get into it and you start really hiring and evaluating your team by those components where that's really becomes more complicated. On one end, if you're in the building mode of a company, you're kind of taking what you can get, right? You're looking for that capacity. And it can be kind of daunting to say, we're not going to choose this person who has that capacity because they don't meet our core values. When ordinarily we would have been like, okay, we'll bring them in. We'll try to modify them as a human or something like that to fit us. But I think when you get over that barrier, you just take that leap. Sean, I think you'd probably agree. I don't want to speak to you or speak for you, but you're right. There's magic that happens when there's those people are out there. And if they meet your core values and they come in with that capacity too, you can move mountains. It is incredible the transformation that happens within the company. Sean, we started that several months ago.
We did, and the neat thing too is once this is illustrated and the team can see that we're driving for strategy and not driving to specifically have a person that we like in a spot that maybe they're not good for, that we're actually leading by this program, this setup arrangement of skills that we need for this particular position. It makes all the difference in the world, and it takes some of that personal, gosh, I don't know if it's conflict that there is in the office. When you have the wrong person in the wrong seat, and everybody knows it, but nobody wants to deal with it. But if they know that you have this accountability chart and that we're all driving to, gosh, I'm trying to say this delicately because you never know whose feelings are going to get hurt. But if they know that you're managing to get the position successful and not the person successful, I think that's, I don't know, in a nutshell, that's kind of what it does. Like you're making that specific position the right spot for the company and not necessarily the right spot for the person.
I think it builds trust. It builds trust in your team and in your leadership and your vision and your ability and choice in the decision making, is because they all feel it. They know that that's not a good team. We're not putting together a good team that functions well together just because people have knowledge. It really, you have to take into consideration the personality traits too to make sure that it's a good functioning team.
I think they're starting to see that too, though. Even identifying when they may not be right for that seat. Like, oh my gosh, looking at it through this lens, I may not want this position, or I may not fully have the capacity for it because I'm doing this other role as well. And they kind of have these identifying like aha moments for themselves, and it's it's a different way to look at it. It works well for us.
Yeah, this kind of internal training, which makes our job a little bit easier as people are evaluating themselves, knowing this is something that we're looking at and we're implementing across the board in reviews and hiring and tougher decisions like terminations. So, Eliot, do you feel like that's your experience with working with other companies?
It absolutely is. I mean, I think that there's a couple of parts. I think one is if sometimes we're just fuzzy on what it means to be successful and how do we even go about building a great team. And with a couple of tools and what we call the accountability chart, just being able to see what are the core functions that have to get done really, really well. It becomes less about the individual. It's just more about the organization. We're all trying to solve a common problem, which is how does this organization succeed? And we need some basic functions done and executed on really well. And so I think one is just being able to make it a little bit less personal and it's a little bit more just about the organization. And the other part, a tool that we call the people analyzer that just lets us see at a glance. What are the core values and behaviors we've got to see demonstrated? Sometimes it gets fuzzy getting to the heart of what are the things that we, from a behavior standpoint, we love, 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 and what are the things that just make our eyes twitch? And when we can get to the heart and discover what are the behaviors that really, really matter, things as simple as, well, we show up on time, we're professional, we support each other, we're positive, we're relentless about focusing on the client or the customer, whatever those things are that at the end of the day, we're saying, this is just who we are. When we can get to the heart of it and we hire, fire, as harsh as that might sound, reward and recognize, because ultimately we want everyone who does demonstrate, who is a fit, to look to the right, to look to the left and say, yep, I'm surrounded by people who are that. It creates an environment where ultimately sometimes I'm in the wrong seat, but I'm the right person for the organization. Great, we can see that. Maybe there's another seat that just fits me better. That just feels better. Sometimes we're looking around saying there's someone who actually executes on this seat really well, but they're just not right for us culturally. And ultimately, when we can make those moves, what I find is everyone rises up among the team because it becomes more transparent. It's less about an individual, and it's more about how do we create the organization that delivers on what it is that we're looking to do? How do we put ourselves in the right seat? How do I know what I have to do to get to next personally? And I can begin to trust people to the right, to the left, because I know that we're all playing the same game.
I love that you frame it that way and talking about trust and transparency, because I think diving deeper, even from a leadership level or any level of meetings that are happening within the company using this framework, you really do develop trust and that transparent communication that's important to get to the heart of issues. I think sometimes when we're meeting, we dance around, well, not now, but in the past, we dance around topics because we're worried about the personal reaction of others in the room rather than being like calling it out. This is an issue. We have to solve the issue. This isn't about the person. And I think the model that you introduced and the approach of strategy eliminates that. We get the topics on the table we need to talk about because we already have fostered that trust and that communication in each other.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Another thing that this highlights, and I think that this happened to us specifically, Brandy, is it highlights when you have the right person in multiple seats, and they may get it and they may want it or they may not want it. They may have the capacity to do all of those things, but not necessarily optimal for the flow of our leadership team. Like Brandy specifically,
I was going to say,
she has
listeners,
3 or 4 seats. But I mean, as we grow and now that we've identified those things and our capacity constraints and the things that we're trying to do as a growing business, we've identified opportunities with that particular tool that will help us find those gaps in our team and fill those. Maybe that's a new role that we need to create, or a person we need to hire, or maybe someone within the team that we can elevate that may be able to GWC that role.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, having that framework with smaller organizations that are kind of lifting like we are, because we're go, go, go. We're firefighting, right? And we don't often take the time to stop and take a step back and really look at the company in an intentional way, right? We're seeing things as we're going, and we're taking care of the low hanging fruit and operating by, I don't know, but gut instincts, right? And this framework, I think the structured way of approaching it, every time we meet, I take a step back and I'm like, dang it, how did I miss this? How do I not see this when I'm in the mode? So I think it's incredibly valuable for the growing companies.
I appreciate it, and I think Sean, what you were alluding to, and Brandy, what you're talking about. So I am super passionate. I'm a little bit obsessed about how we spend our time as individuals. Pretty intentional about it myself because time is all we have. And ultimately, it is about we can't just keep trying to do more and more and more. What ends up happening too often in our lives is we look back and we just say we've accomplished a bunch of tasks, but we haven't really meaningfully moved our organization or our lives forward in a meaningful way. And we just get caught up in the flurry of activity, and ultimately we just start feeling, that sense of a lack of control. And I really believe that we all, as business owners, as entrepreneurial leaders, business leaders, we've got this tremendous opportunity to define and to lead an intentional life, to create an intentional business. So we get to where it is that we want to go, but we also have a life while we're at it. And I think some of those components that you talked about are part of it is we can't get to where we want to go if we don't have a team and organization that we design by intent. But the other couple of elements that I might just put in there is that, we did a lot of work around the vision component, which we haven't talked too much about, but there's a part there that what ends up happening in our lives, and I'll connect the dots to Sean, I think exactly what you're talking about with having the time and not being spread too thin, is that when we can create a team that shares a common vision, and I kind of use that metaphor of I'm just really bad at puzzles. Like if you put me in a room and you dumped a 1,000-piece puzzle set, you walked out with the box top, and you come back an hour later, I'm not going to make much progress on that puzzle. I'm going to be distracted. It's just not how my brain works. But if you leave the puzzle piece box top behind and that picture is on top, come back an hour later and I'm a little bit competitive, I'll figure out how to put those pieces together and you'll see me chipping away at that. The challenge in business is we don't define that box top. We don't create a shared box top vision of what we're trying to do as an organization. But when we can create a team, and as we went through the experience of creating our vision within 2 pages, and what that is we answer 8 questions. What exactly are the core values, the behaviors we've got to surround ourselves with, the 3 to 7? What exactly is our core focus? Can we get crystal clear about why we're even doing this? What's our purpose, our cause, our passion, and the niche that we play in? Because that's a sweet spot for us as an organization. What's our longer term target, our 10-year target? Just a stake in the ground of what's the number we're shooting for? Because that's what we're working so hard to get to. Who exactly is our target customer and what's our message to them? Can we just get crystal clear there? Because that's going to inform what our message to the customer, and it's totally going to inform the back-end processes, systems, and people, because we got to deliver on that promise to the customer. Can we describe our 3-year picture crystal clear in every aspect? What's our revenue going to be? What's our profit going to be? A couple of measurables. How many people? What divisions? What functions? How many service lines? What awards? What accolades? What's the culture going to feel like? How many trucks are we going to have? What's the brand going to look like? Whatever that might be. Can we describe crystal clear what the world is going to look like 3 short years from now? My gosh, if we've got a leadership team that shares that picture, can say, I can see it in my mind's eye, the likelihood we're going to deliver that is that much higher, but it also makes our 1-year planning that much more crisp. 1-year plan, just bring that horizon in. What's our revenue going to be? What's our profit going to be? And we can't do 26 different things because everything becomes nothing. What are the 3 to 7 huge things we're going to deliver on, no matter what, by the end of this year? And then let's pull it in closer. Over the next 90 days, we call up rocks. What are the big things we got to move forward, or what are the big things we got to crush, which are however we want to define it. But over the next 90 days, where's our revenue be? Where's our profit going to be? And what are the 3 to 7 things we've got to deliver over the next 90 days? Crystal clear. We know exactly what it is. We know week on, week out, whether we'll be on track. The goal is to get to 80% or better, and then we got a ton of issues. When we can create that and see that as a leadership team, that's the box top that we miss too often, the puzzle piece box top. Because once we have that in place, as leaders, we'll figure out how to put the parts and pieces in to make that happen. And so that's one part. Do we have that vision set? And then the other part is, can we meet in a way so that every week we're staying focused on what are the measurables that matter? What are those rocks that we're trying to move forward? What actions did we say we're going to do over the next week that are to-dos? And then we've got a discipline. We spend 60 minutes just flushing out every issue that's going to get us off track. Where we're not delivering on the scorecard, we're not delivering on our rocks or the rest of the business. And we have a discipline about pulling up what are the big issues we got to talk about right now, and we chip away at it. When we can combine that shared vision with right people in the right seats, and we have a discipline about how we meet, there's such power there. And then I think, Sean, to connect the dots to what you said, there's one other part, which is we can only do so much. And as leaders, too often we are in every single seat in the organization or all sorts of seats we shouldn't be. And ultimately, when we've got this platform, one of the powers is we get to delegate so we can elevate, because that we become the bottleneck too often in our organizations. And so then when we can have a discipline where every quarter, every year, we look and we say, what's all the stuff I'm actually not good at and I don't like doing, which for me is just about everything in business. What's all the stuff I shouldn't be doing anymore? I might be good at it, but I shouldn't be doing anymore. I got to let go of that stuff. I've got to delegate that so that I can spend more time and energy in my sweet spot, doing the things I love doing and I'm great at, because that's my unique ability. That'll be the power to take this business to the next level, or the stuff I'm good at and I like doing. And the more time we can spend doing that work, the more power there's in the organization. And when we've got that combined with a shared vision and a discipline on how we meet, so we keep moving the big stuff forward, and a discipline in delegating stuff so we can elevate to focus where we need to, that there's power there. That's when organizations and teams start to take off.
Yep. And I am guilty of trying to take things on all the time. I like to solve puzzles. And so my team's constantly like, Sean, telling me to get out of there. And it's true. I think, I think one of the benefits of having like an implementer like you, Eliot, is that you challenge those things. We move fast. We're a company that's super motivated. We want to do a lot of things. We try to bite off more than we can chew. And we aren't very good at predicting how long that's going to take and anticipating things that might come up. And so I just appreciate you being that outside kind of facilitator saying, can we press on this and make sure that this is achievable? Yeah. And as a team, I think you doing that, it stirs the conversation. We spend a lot of time generating our plan to make sure it's the right fit for us over the next year.
I honestly think one of the most powerful tools in the EOS system, at least for me, and that has been, and probably will continue to be the most powerful tool, is solving issues and getting the team together to like collectively get to air out their issues. This is something that most teams don't get to do. So they get to sit in a room, air out all their issues, and then see what is troubling all combined, and then decide together what are the issues that really matter to our goals and our progress and our rocks and stuff that's happening right now. And they decide together what to tackle. And gosh, if that isn't the most valuable thing. I mean, the most important thing I think for most people is getting to just vent the stuff that is bothering them, and get that out in the air, and even just doing that, it sometimes, I mean, it alleviates the problem. It's like the ibuprofen for your company, you know what I mean? It just takes that headache away.
Back into culture, right? It makes them more stronger that way.
Yeah.
Sean, so I think it takes a good year. I mean, it takes a full year, I think, to really see the value in this kind of concept too. When we came together last week to do our annual planning, we had set, our 3-year goals and crystal clear in very distinct ways what that would look like. And I was blown away that even though we had not opened up that 3-year plan, how close the things that we said that we were going to start accomplishing, we've already been working toward it and accomplishing those things without conscientiously thinking about it all the way through the year. That gave me goosebumps. That was astounding. So I think it's a testament to what you're saying, Eliot. As long as we all have this crystal clear vision about where we're going, we're going to make progress. We're going to start heading in that direction.
Wasn't that an emotional moment?
I was going to say, Sean, I think you were crying, and
I was like, oh my gosh, that was to look at the list, and then you get so caught up in your day to day, making sure that we keep the lights on and we keep paychecks in people's pockets, and we keep our customers happy. But gosh, the goals that we set out before, looking back at that list and all the accomplishments that we made, and the fact that we haven't recognized many of those because we've been so caught up in the weeds. But yeah, that was not just an eye opener, but like I said, emotional. Like, oh my gosh, what a feeling of accomplishment that was to look back and say, not only did we have these goals and ambitions, but we actually followed through on quite a few of those. And I would say maybe what 50-60%, Randy. I don't want to. I mean, I don't think it was too much further than that, but gosh, that still felt incredible that we had done all those things, and I hadn't even recognized any of it until we sat down to actually go back through the plan and restructure it for the next 12 months and 3 years, and that was pretty cool.
I am excited to see how we'll go in the next year, because where we're at right now is that we're at this point where we've gotten disciplined about using this kind of framework, but now we're pushing it down to the rest of the company. So it becomes like company wide framework that we all use. And having that employee engagement, I think, is going to help us tackle a lot more, a lot sooner. Um, what strategies would you recommend, Eliot, when it comes to employee engagement and making sure everybody else is aligned with this vision to kind of feed into that acceleration of strategy?
Yeah, I think one of the beauties of EOS as a system, the entrepreneurial operating system as a system, is as you're going through, you're just using and creating a set of simple, without being simplistic, tools and disciplines that the first part is just mastering them as a leadership team. And then the opportunity is to take it out further into the organization. And I always really believe that 20% of the challenge is just getting us as a leadership team working, thinking, and acting in a certain way. Ultimately, it's about getting the 80. The 80% comes from getting the rest of our organization rowing in that same direction, engaged, thinking, and working in that same way. And one of the beauties is when you've got a set of tools and disciplines, you can roll those out further into the organization. And so, as I think about it, we've just touched on a few. For example, the concept of an accountability chart, organizing our organization a certain way, a tool that we call the people analyzer, being able just to say, what are the core values? And does everyone fit? Right person, right seat. When we talked about the vision component, the vision traction organizer is a 2-page tool that we use to organize our answers to those 8 questions. What are our core values? What's our core focus? Our 3-year picture, our 1-year plan, our 90-day rocks, etc. And when we meeting, having a cadence of every quarter meeting a certain way, setting those rocks, the 90-day objectives in a very clear way, and then meeting every single week with a clear agenda, so that every week we come together for 90 minutes, which seems like an amazing amount of time, but we just get rid of a whole bunch of other meetings because we radically prioritize issues, get to the heart, solve them, move forward. When I think about rolling that out further in the organization, one of the great things is when you've got a set of tools or disciplines, it makes it easier to roll out. And so what oftentimes happens is even after the first 60 days, but at the end of the day, there's a right cadence for every organization. We figure that out. And I should note that one of the beauties of this is these tools are out there. So if an organization wants to implement on their own, they can implement on their own. If they need the support of or want the support of an implementer to help implement, they can get that too. But when I think about rolling it out to the rest of the organization, the real opportunity is, as an example, what if every quarter we were able to come out of our quarterly planning session as a leadership team and bring everyone into the room together? Say, this is where we're going because we need to create a shared vision. Can we start to create an organization where everyone, assuming the right people, right seat, is engaged in understanding, this is where we're going. Thank you so much for appreciating me demonstrating this core value. So let's bring everyone together so we can bring those core values to life, celebrate, recognize the people who are such a great fit, and explain why they're so important to the organization. We remind everyone what the core focus is, the sweet spot of our organization. It's why we do things and why we don't do other things. What are we going for longer term? Who's our target customer, and why is it that sometimes we want to do some crazy things, systemize things, etc., so that we can deliver these amazing things to the customer that sets us out and makes us different, sets us apart, makes us different from the competition? Where are we going 3 years from now? Can we begin to create that painted, vivid picture so that everyone can has a sense at the altitude that matters to them of where we're going? What are we trying to do this year? What are we focused on the next 90 days, etc.? So one part is actually bringing everyone together and involving and engaging them so that everyone, more and more people, I usually say, let's go tier by tier by tier, has that shared picture of what it is that we're trying to create. Ultimately, helping everyone, every department, every function have the right scorecard. So we're focused on the right measurables that matter for our department, for our function, and starting to connect the dots for everyone so that we all have a measurable. And we know I could be the parking lot attendant in an auto dealership, and I know that there are two things that matter: how fast did I bring the car to the customer, and our CSI, our customer satisfaction index for the business. I tie into that. And then ultimately, what we call a level 10 meeting, have a meeting that the team itself would score a 10 out of 10 at the end, bringing everyone together so that for their respective department, their respective function, they understand, here are the measurables that matter for our function. Are we on track or off track? What worked, what didn't work? Let's capture that as an issue if we're off track. What are we trying to do over the next 90 days? Big or small? How we doing? Are we on track? If we're off track, we drop that down as an issue. What's going on in the business? Let me bring up anything that's bugging me, annoying me, not working. And I know that it's going to get on a list somewhere. We've captured that. And then we have a disciplined way. Just because someone squeaks really loud or yells really loud, that doesn't mean it's the biggest, most important priority. Everyone understands for our department, for our function, we're going to have a discipline in identifying the biggest, most important priority for the week. We get to the heart of what that issue really is. We discuss the solution options, and we define something we're going to do to get after that issue. And incrementally, we chip away, chip away, chip away at the biggest, most important thing. So ultimately, it's about little by little creating an entire organization that thinks in a similar way, acts in a similar way, and is consistently moving forward on the things it sets out to do.
I love that. I think it fosters trust too and sharing what the ultimate vision is and provides clarity in how our team members can help us achieve those goals. Personally, the teams that we've had that have been involved in this process so far that we've incorporated into the goal achievement and such, they've come alive with fire. It's very exciting to see them just take it and run with it, and it's a load off of our shoulders.
Yes.
It's pretty great too. We keep talking about everyone rowing in the same direction. I think Instafab maybe 9 months ago. I'm not even sure we were all in the same boat, let alone rowing in the same direction. But gosh, the team has a newfound fire right now that is just inspiring, and I have to believe that it's the work that we're putting in that's driving that they're starting to see the picture and believe in the picture and they're seeing the results from the efforts that they're putting in, and it's driving the whole group together. Like you said, we're finally rowing, and it may be upstream still, but we're rowing in the same direction. I think it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get lost in this idea as business leaders that all you need is a great idea, right? It doesn't matter about execution, but how you execute is probably the most important thing. Even if you just have an adequate idea, if you execute it really well, that can be the difference between a well-performing company and a mediocre performing company.
I sometimes take the word entrepreneurial operating system out, and I just take that first word out and I'll call it an execution operating system, because I think at the end of the day, this is a system that's really about executing. And the challenge is it's hard to execute without people. So we've got to be able to create an organization that works. But then with that, we've got to create the disciplines that allow us to execute really, really well, whether it's having the right data, the right processes in place, or just the right structures where we can bring people together and keep chipping away on the issues or the challenges that are getting us in the way of our executing 90 day by 90 day by 90 day. And I think sometimes to connect the dots, you talked, I think, or maybe alluded to looking at that 3-year picture and getting a little bit emotional about how much progress you've actually made on that 3-year picture, maybe even forgetting some of the words there that you put out there. One of the powers of the system, I think, is that I really believe that people and organizations overestimate what they're going to accomplish in a year, but they underestimate what they'll do in 10. The power is if I can be clear about what I want to do 10 years from now, if I can be crystal clear about what it should look like 3 years from now, then as I set my 1-year goals, it really informs those 1-year goals. And then we just chip away and check and adjust 90 day by 90 day by 90 day. But when we're doing that as a whole team, there's such power.
And I think sometimes you realize too that the goals you set out before don't necessarily drive your 3-year, 10-year plan. Your I guess your perception on what it would take to get there is not the same. So
Yes.
For the final question, if listeners want to explore more about this concept of the EOS model, can you give them some tips, books, locations that they can go find more information?
Absolutely. I think one of the beauties of the entrepreneurial operating system, one of the reasons I love it so much, is there are a set of tools and disciplines that a team can implement on their own, or again, they can get the support of an implementer to help them implement. And so, a few resources. One is I'd really encourage people to go to the website eosworldwide.com. That's a great set of tools and resources out there, including some of the tools that we talked about are available for download free right there. Second, I'd really encourage reading a couple of books. Traction by Gino Wickman, and also the book Get a Grip. Traction lays out the tools, the model, the discipline sort of in a linear way, and Get a Grip is more of a fable of what it looks like and feels like for an organization to implement EOS. That's a great starting point. If a team wants to also have some of their employees read the book, What the Heck is EOS is also a great book that's more broad team oriented. And a third place to go is to look for an implementer in the region. There are folks who are out there like me. If someone were looking for me, they could just type my first name, last name, and EOS, and they'll find me out there pretty easily. But there are a community of folks whose passion is helping organizations to implement EOS into their organization. So 3 great places to go: the EOS Worldwide website, the book Traction or Get a Grip, and then also just to reach out to the implementer community, and there are folks out there who can help implement.
Thank you, Eliot. Thank you for so much for being a guest on today's show too. You're a phenomenal speaker, and you just have a way of unpacking these concepts really well. So I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners.
You do. I absolutely agree with Brandy. You're exceptional at your coaching in this with the system specifically, and I know even outside the system, you're a great resource just to chat with and discuss these things. I appreciate you a lot, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you. And I do want to say that, I think I appreciate your comments. At the end of the day, the ability of any organization to move forward and change is really based on its leadership team. And Brandy and Sean, I just applaud the vision that you have for where you want to take the organization, the clarity with which you have of how to get there. Is amazing. And then, sometimes people will say, well, we love this EOS thing. How fast can we go? And what I always say is the speed with which an organization can move is really based, when it comes to thinking about this framework or the set of tools and disciplines, it's really based on the seriousness with which it takes those tools and disciplines and the degree to which the leadership team rolls up its sleeves to dive in and really execute on it. And I just want to just applaud, I think, both the vision that you have, the ability you've got to execute and to move an organization. And then from an EOS perspective, the seriousness with which you've taken thinking of this as not just a set of tools and disciplines, but really an enabling ability for the organization and rolling it out with maybe discipline and fervor in a good way, if those are 2 of the right words. So thank you so much. It's been just an honor working together.
Thank you, Eliot. And to our listeners, we'll catch you next time on another episode of Steel Connections. See ya.
See you then.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, if we could bring out Eliot, that would be fantastic.
Let me give a brief intro while we bring him out.
So Eliot Wajskol is a certified EOS implementer, and he's passionate about assisting leaders who are driving business growth and maintaining a business life.
Oh, shoot. I'm going to pause that. We're going to have to read.
Do you want to take me away?
We're so excited to get Eliot out here that we just can't. For your 10-year plan, you're I think we lost somebody.
Oh, we lost Brandy. Well, it's been fun chatting about this. Brandy, you're back.
I got kicked out. Without further...
Please.